I've had the worst few weeks, but it's been even worse for my 13-year-old niece Alice. 5 weeks ago, I lost my brother Aaron and his wife Taylor in a fatal car accident. My 13-year-old niece went from being a happy child one day to an orphan the next. The painful task of telling her fell to me. I have a special bond with my niece. She's an IT nerd like her uncle. It was heartbreaking to see her go from a smiling girl to a sobbing mess. She cried in my arms until she fell asleep. Aaron was my younger brother, but I always looked up to him. He had a way with people, always willing to help whenever he could. Always ready to talk if needed. If he said he would do something, you could be sure it would be done. I took Alice home with me, and the following week, my parents arranged the funeral. A few days after, we had a family meeting to discuss Alice's future, who would take care of her, and what official steps needed to be taken. I am very successful in my field, child-free by choice. I'm currently single. While I never saw myself as a parent, I will never be able to replace Aaron. But I can be the uncle who takes care of her. My parents are willing to take Alice in. They are retired but well off, not rich but better than average. They have raised 2 wonderful sons. I believe they can raise my niece, but I also believe they deserve to enjoy retirement and have the role of grandparents, not primary caregivers. The options were me or my parents. I love my niece and wanted what was best for her, so I told my parents I wanted to take care of her. After some back and forth, we decided that I would take Alice in. They were fully supportive, offering to help wherever they could. My sister-in-law was an orphan, so there was no family on her side who could take Alice in. Alice has been staying with me since her parents' death. A week after the funeral, I started taking her back to school, trying to restore some normalcy in her life. We went to my brother's house to gather her belongings and move them into my place. My parents handled my brother's estate and took care of anything of sentimental value. Alice has access to everything from her parents. Since Alice is the sole heir, she now owns the house, but because of her age, she needs a legal guardian. That's when we decided I would adopt her. Of course, we discussed it with Alice first. Then things took a turn. We started the formal adoption process. In my country, in cases like this, the biological family has the first right to adopt a child. Naturally, we had to do a DNA test to prove Alice and I are related. It seems straightforward. She's the daughter of my brother, so we are blood related. And then we found out. Alice and I are not blood related. I can't adopt her. When we found out that my niece is not related to me, everything became confusing. How could the daughter of my brother not be related to me? First things first, I contacted a lawyer. There must have been a mistake. We repeated the test and the result was the same. Biologically, my niece and I are not related. With the help of the lawyer, we obtained my brother and his wife's medical records and secured a subpoena to test their DNA against Alice's. Alice is Taylor's daughter, but not Aaron's. How was this possible? Was Alice conceived through a donor? My parents knew nothing about that, so we delved into their medical files. There was no evidence of anything like that. As far as the OB/GYN knew, Alice was the daughter of Taylor and Aaron. But DNA doesn't lie. She is not my brother's biological daughter. After some back and forth, my mother finally said what we were all thinking. Is it possible that Taylor cheated on Aaron? It's possible, but how do we find out? We can't confront Taylor, and it happened 14 years ago. And unless you have a sample to compare it to, a DNA test is meaningless. Now the legal trouble. For custody of Alice, we have a judge who follows the law strictly. Alice's biological family has the first right to adopt. So we have to find him and get him to relinquish that right before I can adopt Alice. Even with all the evidence we presented, the judge refuses to change the process. And here's the worst part. Because I and my parents are not biologically related to Alice, she is not allowed to stay with us while we search for the biological father. So the court took Alice from me and placed her in the foster system until we find the biological family or until a year has passed. That day was one of the worst experiences of my life. I refused to let her go and the police was called. Alice was taken away while I was held back by 2 police officers. My niece has no choice but to be strong. 3 months ago, she lost her parents, and in the process of me adopting her, we discovered she is not biologically related to me. She is not my brother's daughter. We don't know for sure, but it seems my late sister-in-law cheated on my brother and had Alice. But that means the unknown biological father and his family have the first right to adopt her, and I have to wait until he relinquishes his rights or for a year to pass. In the meantime, Alice is in the foster system. I've been doing everything I can to stay updated on Alice's whereabouts. I bought her a phone and we both secured it. She was the only one who could use it and I paid for the phone plan. Since the phone is in my name, I'm allowed to track it. As long as Alice has her phone, I'll know where she is. And in case she loses her phone, we created a webmail address so she can contact me if we lose track of her. For the past 2 months, we've been texting and she's been telling me how she's being treated. It's not good. Here's the frustrating part. Legally, I have no rights to interfere and improve my niece's life. The phone is the only thing they allowed. The search for her biological dad is frustrating. We don't know where to start. We can't just round up all of Taylor's male friends, acquaintances, and coworkers we know and ask them for a DNA test. So we have to dig into her history to find out who it could be. Who was she close to 14 years ago? Alice is struggling. She knows Aaron is not her biological father and she has a hard time with her feelings towards her mother. Her whole life she has seen her parents loving each other. There was no sign there was anyone else. She loved her mother but doesn't know how to feel now that she knows. She still loves her father even if he is not her biological father. She knows we still love her and are fighting for her. My parents also have a hard time with all of it. They are angry with Taylor. Because of her actions, their grandchild is in this situation. Like me, they are texting her daily and calling me to ask for updates. I love them and I understand, but sometimes it's a little too much. I have to tell them every day that I don't have an update. It breaks me every time I have to do that. We still need to find the biological dad or wait 10 more months until I have the right to adopt Alice. And while my parents and I are struggling, this is worse for Alice. She is strong. She learned that from Aaron. To her, he will always be her father. I'm not giving up. I love my niece and she needs her uncle. 2 months ago, my niece's phone went offline. 24 hours after it went offline, I drove to its last known location. My niece's phone is in my name, so I could report it stolen. This gave me reason to go to the last location with a police officer. After a lot of back and forth, the phone was handed over to me. But Alice wasn't there. Where was my niece? All they could tell me is that she was picked up by the foster system a few days ago. She was brought to another foster home. When I asked why, they deflected. And that is where the foster system was very unhelpful. Because I have no rights, they refused to help me. I got my lawyer involved, but that didn't help much. After 2 weeks of no contact, I got an email from Alice. She gave me the address of her new foster home. She begged me to come get her. I raced to the new location. I know it didn't help my case much, but I had to be there for my niece. I barged into the home, and as soon as I saw Alice, I took her in my arms and ran with her outside. No, I didn't take her away. I just wanted her out of that house. It was terrible in there. I was holding her and verbally fighting the foster father until the cops arrived and separated us. Luckily, the officers had a sympathetic ear. I got them to talk to Alice about her living situation. I gave Alice her phone back. I looked at the foster father and said, "That phone is my property. If you take it away from her, I will report it stolen and I will be back." My impulsive action did have some good results. The foster family was investigated and they were shut down. Alice was moved to another foster family, and these people are good people. While I have no rights according to the law, these people allow me to visit Alice. And they did allow me to take her out and spend the day with her. I couldn't let her sleep over, she had to be back before dark. But it was good to take Alice to visit my parents. The search for her biological dad has stopped. We have no leads anymore. Unless someone in her biological family does the 23andMe test, we have no idea how to find them. It looks like we have to wait 6 more months before I can adopt my niece. 2 months ago, I adopted Alice successfully. The mystery of why Alice is not my brother's has been solved. And it is not what we thought, it is worse. I was out with a group of friends, honoring and celebrating Aaron's birthday. Alice was spending the night at her grandparents'. Some of these friends included mutual friends of mine, Aaron and Taylor. In the conversation, I must have said something nasty about Taylor. I honestly don't remember. Later that evening, a friend of Taylor took me aside. I hadn't seen her since the funeral. She told me not to be angry at Taylor. I asked her what she knew, and she told me it would be better if I read it in Taylor's words. Taylor had a journal, I should look for it. I didn't remember seeing a journal. But this friend was adamant it should be somewhere Taylor would feel it was safe. The next morning, I went to Aaron's home to look through the last things. After searching for an hour, I found Taylor's journal. It was in Aaron's safe. The combination was Alice's birthday backwards. I waited until Alice was asleep to read it. The journal was not a normal one. It was one of those journals you get from a therapist. 15 years ago, Taylor went on a weekend trip. One of the friends was the woman who led me to the journal. I remember that trip. Aaron flew over to join them halfway through and they stayed the rest of the week. But according to the journal, that's not why he flew over. On the second night, the girls were drugged and raped. It is unclear how many rapists there were. Taylor was the worst off. She had to go to the hospital. Aaron flew over as soon as the hospital contacted him. He never left her side. He helped her with her recovery. When they found out Taylor was pregnant, they decided not to do a test. Because right before she left, they made love. There was a chance Alice was his. They decided to raise Alice as his, choosing not to know. In her journal, Taylor expressed her shame for what happened. The trip was her idea. This was the reason none of us were made aware of the assault. She also expressed her love for Aaron for staying with her. Aaron brought her to therapy, showed her and their daughter love, and kept the secret. Taylor and Aaron died loving their daughter without knowing she wasn't biologically his. I cried reading this. We all thought bad of Taylor. We were all wrong. I did tell my parents and showed them the journal. I don't know yet how we are going to navigate this with Alice. At the moment, she hates her mother, thinking she cheated. We can't have that, but how do we tell her to love her mother and not reveal what we know? How can we tell Alice she was the product of rape after the year she had? Alice was already seeing a therapist because of her experience in foster care. I have talked to that therapist to tell what we've learned. Alice is already doing better. We are going to follow the therapist's advice in how and when to talk to Alice about this. 2 days ago, I visited Taylor's grave. For over a year, I thought she was unfaithful to my brother. I owe her an apology. At her grave, I promised Taylor I will do anything in my power to raise Alice to become a woman she can be proud of. And I promised her that I will return with Alice, and she will love her mother again.